We're back. And so is Melania Trump.
Oh my gosh, so back. So back.
Her White House portrait. I love the side-by-sides.
Yes, I was going to say, like, when you see the previous one compared to this one, first one was great, obviously, but this is just stunning. Like, you can't, there's so much power, and she's just so fierce.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. I'm
It's
obsessed.
It's such a statement.
I mean, the contrast starts with the color, right? We're all seeing, we have it up on the screen, black and white versus colored. I think a huge other piece of this is her body posture, super strong, like you said, but also in her last photo, she had her arms crossed. You could see her wedding ring very pronounced. And I almost feel like it was intentional that this time her wedding ring, it's still there. You can see it if you look very closely, but she's kind of making a statement like, this is my time too. I am the first lady. I'm doing a lot. And we've seen her make statements like this with the media in the past. I mean, when she went to Africa back in 2018, people tried to, bring up drama. And she's like, I'm going to talk about my trip. Like, I will talk to you about this, but don't bring the drama in. And I just love, she's kind of day one. I'm not putting up with anything that you throw at me. I'm here to work for the American people, and I'm here to get down to business.
It's very 007, right? And I think it's she's so striking. It's incredible. But I think we talked about this last week, just with the fashion at the inauguration and everything. And I think it is such a nod to women and women in leadership positions that it seems like this go around, not that she wasn't strong in the first administration, but this go around, she's really kind of staking her claim and saying, I'm a part of this. Like she's made comments about President Trump and her and their partnership. And it just seems like this second Trump administration, she's coming in not just like, I'm some pretty former supermodel arm candy. I'm here to do the work of the American people. So look out. It's just a statement. I love it.
And the word partnership, I think that's important because it almost, like, this is a very business in a way looking photo, like boardroom. I'm here to get down to business. Yeah. Almost like a business partnership with her husband. I'm like, we're running.
Do you think it's going to make the pantsuit great again?
I mean, Hillary did a disservice the last few years.
Kamala, I think this photo is also a great preview of her Be Best campaign that she launched in the first administration and how she said she's going to continue that work in the second administration. So I'm just really excited to see the impact that she's going to bring. And I mean, obviously she looks her best. So this is a great example of being her best.
High bar right away.
No, not everyone loved this photo though. Vogue. I don't even want to talk about them, but they did criticize this photo and they were like, I don't understand what she's doing. This is highly edited. And honestly, I think people, first of all, no one's really paying attention. This was a backlog X account that I even saw this on. So no one's really paying Vogue any mind, but it's just, again, she doesn't care. She's here to work, and Vogue, get out of the way. I don't want to be on your cover.
Well, it's going to be really rich when Vogue and the other, pop culture publications are going to have to start covering her.
Right.
Because she is so popular and obviously amazing. But I mean, I noticed that even Amazon Prime is going to release a documentary about her. Like, the left-wing media can't avoid her any longer, so they're going to have to start playing ball. It's going to be epic.
Bend the knee.
So epic. Well, I'm Virginia Allen. Thank you all for joining us here on Problematic Women. Joining me today is...
I'm Kristen Eichhammer.
I'm Crystal Bonner.
And I'm Madison Marino-Dunn.
We're so glad to have you.
I love the new last name.
I know. Congratulations, Madison.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And we're going to talk later about your book that is coming out in May, you said, right? Okay.
With my two
So
co-authors.
we'll chat a little bit about that later in the show. We're really excited today just to be diving in to things that are happening with our government that are seeking to improve life for the next generations. When we talk about posterity, when we talk about the next generation, so much of what happens in Washington, D.C. Has an influence on that next generation, on our kids, our grandkids, and everything from the RFK hearing today to executive orders that Trump has signed to the new education report card. It all comes down to what are we doing to fix it for our kids, for our next generation. So if you're joining us for the first time on Problematic Women today, we are so glad that you are with us. Every Wednesday, we join you on YouTube to break down the news, to break down news that is specifically of interest to conservative women, or as we say, problematic women. And then if you're joining us on Thursday across all podcast platforms, or maybe later in the week after this show has gone out across podcast platforms on Thursday, thanks so much for joining us there. We do love having our listeners join us on Rumble and YouTube because sometimes we're putting up pictures and we're playing clips and things like that so you can actually see it. But we will explain
what's going
on for those of you who are driving and listening to podcasts on the go, as I usually am. So thank you guys for being with us. Without further ado, let's talk RFK.
Oh, Maha. And so much to talk about because his hearing was today. This was the long anticipated hearing. They didn't have it scheduled the last time I think we were talking about confirmation hearings. I mean, I watched the entire thing because I want to see what Mr. Kennedy wants to do with HHS, CDC, all of those organizations. Obviously, COVID we've been feeling the impact of that for the last 4 years. And we've talked about this previously. Accountability is going to be huge for this administration. And this is one of the spearheaders of that. So did you guys, first of all, did y'all watch any of the clips or any of the hearing?
I have seen some clips across social.
I was tuning in and out. I mean, obviously Wednesday morning, busy day here at work at the office, but
you didn't have time for a 2-hour hearing.
It's just funny when I kept, tuning in, tuning out, like trying to keep my eye on what was going on with the RFK hearing. It really just kept coming back to vaccines and transparency, and they kept hitting him on the same things over and over, which I get it. Like, these senators are doing their job. They're asking the questions that their constituents want them to ask. But sometimes, like, my ADHD brain gets so annoyed because I'm like, every single senator is asking like the same exact question, and RFK is giving his answer. So if one senator asks your questions on vaccine skepticism, like, can you just ask something else?
Or just walk out of the room and save everyone time.
Yeah. Right? And like, we're here watching this for hours, and it seems like half the time the senators they all ask the same question or two. And it's like, okay, we got the answer, can we just move on?
Yeah. And that's what I loved about this hearing is it was so clear that we knew this was going to be hostile just because he was a Democrat gone independent. So the Democrats' knives were out. It was pretty vicious. And honestly, I mean, they brought up so many crazy things that have nothing to do with health or healthcare. If I had to summarize this hearing in one sentence, I would probably say, while senators that didn't like him were focused on, the nitty gritty and his past and abortion, obviously, because what else does the left have? He was focused on systematic failures, and he does a really, really good job. Actually, let's just cue up clip 3, please. Does a really great job in summarizing the problem itself, which is what he was hired to do.
To fix it.
Ask me because I'm in a unique position to end that. And that is what I'm doing. And if we don't solve that problem, Senator, all of the other disputes we have about who's paying, and whether it's insurance companies, whether it's providers, whether it's HMOs, whether it's patients or families, all of those are moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. Our ship is sinking. Our 60% increase in Medicaid over the past 4 years is the biggest budget line now, and it's growing faster than any other. And no other nation in the world has what we have here. No other nation has a chronic disease. We have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world.
Okay, so let's summarize that because it sounds like you two couldn't hear it. Basically, what RFK was saying is, I picked this clip specifically too because he calls it the Titanic, which obviously we all know how I feel about. But
Chris, it's good.
He is pointing to the fact that a lot of times people are being bogged down by the nitty gritty details of who's paying who and what the insurance is going to look like, and Medicaid and Medicare, which is a complicated matter that I'm sure some of these senators can't even tell you the difference between, let alone, they also can't tell the difference between a gender. But he talks about that and is responding to a question where, again, they're fighting about who's paying for what and how the private insurance system, is failing or how it's just working in general, nitty gritty. And he's like, it doesn't matter though, because the lifeboats aren't as important as the Titanic in this instance, which is this huge sinking ship of a healthcare system. Yeah. And like I said earlier, they're so focused on the nitty gritty that they're missing. And not once did they really bring up food. RFK brought up food more so than anyone else. But they were so focused on the little levers, the government levers already in place. And RFK's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not what I was hired to do. I was hired to figure out what the core problem is and why people are becoming sick from the healthcare system that's supposed to treat them. So that's kind of what he was saying.
It's about prevention, not just fixing it. I think that was interesting. One of the things he said was a 60% increase in Medicaid in the past 4 years. So it's like, all right, more and more people are using these services. That's not a good thing. We don't want more and more Americans being dependent on big pharma and our medical system. We want people to be healthier so they don't have to be.
And the root cause of all of it, as he alluded to many times, is essentially Americans are sicker and fatter than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And so you have to get to the root causes of these things, and not just to your point, Kirsten, the levers that government has to use to kind of play with or manipulate the healthcare market as it is today. And getting to those root causes is huge. You brought up the fact that he brought up nutrition and additives in our food. He talked about his time as an environmental attorney in the Hudson River Valley, realizing that fish that were poisoned from chemicals, those same chemicals affect humans. And how are we getting to this place where we can have this partnership between our food producers and our government with the underlying mentality of making America healthy and keeping us healthy, keeping us off of systems like Medicare that are designed, as a safety net for people who need it. But truly, at the end of the day, the delivery mechanism, they're not getting the care they need anyways. One thing they brought up that I'll kind of nerd out for a second is PBMs, pharmaceutical benefit managers. And essentially what these are, middlemen, right? Where it's like the insurance companies are brokering with middlemen who then deliver prescriptions and whatnot to pharmacies. And it's like, why do we have so many middlemen in our healthcare system that are raking in massive profits at the expense of Americans' health? And like, that was one thing that they brought up that I think will be really interesting to follow and see. I mean, it seems like RFK is like, get rid of PBMs, get rid of, all these middlemen in the healthcare system that are not creating, they're creating neither an efficient system nor a system that's focused on actual health care and not just sick care.
One of the clips that I saw was RFK talking about lunch programs in schools and even starting with something as simple as these programs, like, okay, what are we feeding our kids? Let's start there. I was doing a little research the other day, and there's something called potassium bromate, which is in a lot of our food, specifically our bread, and it's linked to causing cancer. Well, it's banned in the UK, but in the US, we put it in a lot of our bread.
Is it banned in Canada? Can we imagine me wanting to take over Canada?
Let's see how many times we can reference Canada.
Challenge accepted.
Simple, practical things. And it's like, all right, that would be very easy to eliminate. Like, it's put in bread because it makes it rise a little higher and be whiter. It's like, we don't need that. It doesn't affect the taste, quality, any of that. Like, let's get that out. So it's those practical solutions that I'm really excited to see RFK, if he is confirmed, which I think he will be, implement.
One of the things I didn't hear mentioned about in the hearing, and maybe I missed something, so viewers correct me if I'm wrong.
It was a long hearing.
Was there was no mention of the Head Start programs, which Head Start are basically federal funds. We spend about $12 billion on it annually, and they provide federal funding to centers that provide child care services or early childhood, like pre-care services, preschool services for children and families. But the problem is, and we at the Heritage Foundation have pointed this out over the years, that there's been multiple reports by the Inspector Generals, by GAO, that has shown instances of child abuse, fiscal mismanagement, all of these things. So really hoping that RFK and Congress can, address these issues, make sure these families are taken care of, and also, enact a little school choice and reform in there and make these funds portable to families so they can take these funds that are federal funds and take it to the provider of their choice instead of being relegated to some of these providers that are obviously abusing, and there's other instances of things going on.
They alluded to it later on in the hearing. The way they did so, though, again, was a Democrat weaponizing it against RFK, saying and using the Trump administration's freeze on federal funds and trying to force RFK Jr. to answer whether or not he supported that. And they used that as an example of who it's impacting and how it's hurting the communities. Again, weaponizing their constituents against someone rather than actually trying to help them, which very sad. Other things that were brought up, obviously, mifepristone, huge topic that we've discussed here. And just going back to the common sense idea of some of these solutions, one of the things RFK brought up was that a lot of policies that have been in place for a while protect these companies that are creating these drugs. He actually brought that up on Rogan, where he was talking about vaccine companies are not liable because, you know, for the most part, they're safe. Vaccines are safe. So it wouldn't be fair to make these big pharma companies liable for the work that they're doing because vaccines save so many lives. That's something that Democrat senators were bringing up with mifepristone, like it saves lives. And RFK Jr. responds with, well, how many people die? Because we're seeing 3 to 5%, but that's just like what has gotten out. You guys are preventing these reports. And so again, common sense solution is the accountability. Go, Crystal.
No, well, it's just like flashbacks to COVID, right? It all comes down to like how medical providers are reporting back information also, right? Like
whole
the number of
system's
people
rigged.
that died, quote unquote, from COVID, those numbers were vastly abused. I don't want to use the word exaggerated because that might be a little radical, but it was seriously abused during that time period that people died of COVID when in fact they died of other things. They happened to also have COVID at the time. And that just kind of, the mifepristone, wow.
It's a word.
Thing. To me is similar. We did the interview with, what was the doctor's name a while ago?
Dr. Scott?
Yes, Dr. Scott a few weeks back, maybe a couple months back at this point, but she was talking about how the number of women that don't seek medical care when they, have experienced issues with this drug, or they do, and it's classified under other, whatever issues. And at the end of the day, it's basically not reported back that this drug caused these issues. And so I have serious qualms with the reporting apparatus that, is within our medical system at this point. And how can you say, mifepristone is safe for all to use when in fact we don't have all the data? It's not clear.
And they're not encouraged to look for the data. Like in some cases, there have been plenty of examples that he's given on podcasts and also in this hearing where the research went so far and then they gave up when they couldn't find anything. And then if you dug a little bit deeper, you could find where some of that missing data was. I think, again, if we had to summarize this though, in a sentence or two, what RFK said in his opening remarks was incredibly important. He said, a healthy person has 1,000 goals while a sick person only has one. The same can be said for whether you're, sick and struggling from a disease or sick and struggling with an addiction, a nutrition problem, any of that stuff. And I think he did such a good job of bringing it back to Americans with each of his responses. And if you're scared about what he's going to do with McDonald's, Twinkies, all of that, he did have a statement on this. Can we please cue, I think it's clip number 2. It has Twinkies in the title, though.
Cue the Twinkies.
No, he's not going to ban Twinkies.
No, I think if we
We need to deploy NIH and FDA to doing the research to understand the relationship between these different food additives and chronic disease so that Americans understand it and make sure that Americans are aware. But I don't want to take food away from anybody. If you like a cheeseburger, a McDonald's cheeseburger, or a Diet Coke, which my boss loves, and you should be able to get them. If you want to eat Hostess Twinkies, you should be able to do that. But you should know what the impacts are on your family and on your health.
So educated on what you're consuming.
Yeah. Well, and because most of the time you look at the label of like what's in a Twinkie and you're like, I don't know what any of this is.
There's water, usually.
And then all
Aqua.
these like weird
Cream.
ingredients. And you're like, what is that and why on earth is it necessary in this food? So simplifying what is in our ingredients. And I love that idea of almost maybe in the way, there's disclaimers on packages of cigarettes. Like we have the data now to know that certain things do lead to cancer or other diseases. Yeah. People should know that. And there should be a level of accountability.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Wow.
I saw one tweet sum it up really well, that at the end of the day, when the votes come in from the committee and from the full Senate, presuming that he makes it to the floor, you'll know who is funded by big pharma and who is not.
Oh, great point.
By their
Epic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Lots to keep an eye
Like
on.
drop.
Or big ag too, because that's a whole other part of it.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
huge part of it.
Yeah.
Well, excited to watch this unfold. He's again, so this was the first hearing Wednesday. He has another hearing on Thursday. He's really having to fight for this position.
Yeah, they're not holding back. The arrows are out.
The arrows are out. We also have Tulsi Gabbard is going to be testifying before the Senate on Thursday. Lots more confirmation hearings flowing. And again, I think the exciting part about what RFK talked about is, okay, what are we doing for the next generation and how are we preparing them for success? And we're watching the Trump administration be really strategic in the decisions that they're making. And specifically, a lot of those relate to kids. And there was an executive order signed on Tuesday by Trump that is focused on federal funding going towards treatments that are gender-related treatments. So hormones, transgender surgeries, all of those. And Trump said, okay, we're not doing that anymore. We're not using federal taxpayer money in order to allow minors to literally cut off body parts. Practical, common sense. We've seen a number of states take these measures, but now for the federal government to say, yeah, no more. And I loved Chloe Cole. She issued a statement on this, posted a video on X. She's a detransitioner, and I think she summarized it really well. So let's go ahead and roll Chloe Cole's clip.
Incredible news that Donald Trump has sent out an executive order that is going to end childhood transition in the United States. This is a historical first. This is the first executive order in the United States that is going to tackle this institutional abuse of our children. The United States is no longer going to fund or otherwise support the transitioning of children, and it's going to enforce laws that will prohibit this abuse all across the states. There are several federal...
So good to see Chloe Cole, I think, breaking this down and explaining it to people, and someone who's been there, right? Like, she has literally had...
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
The struggle with headphones is real today. But Chloe Cole has, like, she's been in the trenches of this issue. She's had parts of her body literally removed and has spoken and testified before Congress and said, I have so many regrets. And so for someone like Chloe, this is such a major win in her fight and for all kids who have that struggle with gender dysphoria is such a major win, because the struggle with gender dysphoria is real, and we know from the data, from the science, that the majority of kids grow out of it. I was just looking at a study out of Germany that found that 2 out of every 3 young people that struggle with gender dysphoria within 5 years, they've grown out of it. Like, there's a natural process, and like there's a whole other conversation to be had about transgender treatments on adults. But like with kids, this is so common sense.
And there's no coming back from it, right? Like if you have a mastectomy like Chloe Cole had, or other, life-altering surgeries like that, or hormone treatments before you've even really started going through puberty, there's no going back from that. Those are permanent changes. So,
I mean, for the same reasons that kids don't drive before they're 16 or vote before they're 18, they're the same reasons that we should have safeguards on this.
And there's too many other decisions that they are having to make, like between the ages of 14 and 18, that, is going to basically tell of what their entire education and lifestyle is going to look like over the next couple of years. So they should be focusing on making those decisions rather than, gender transition related things.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just common sense. As we always keep saying, it's common sense. The Trump administration is this theme of back to common sense. Well, one of the areas that we need some improvement in for our kids is that of education. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, for all of our listeners, if you're feeling a little bit just overwhelmed by the news lately, like I think we all are a little bit, like it is just nonstop. And if you need an easy way to keep up with what on earth is happening day to day, check out the Daily Signal's Top News in 10 podcast. Every weekday around 5 p.m. we put out a 10-minute show. It's succinct, it's quick. We hit 3 of the big news stories from the day, and then we do a really quick and be aware of this and this and this. So it's fast, it's succinct, and it's designed to make sure as you're headed into your evening, maybe going and hang out with friends, sitting around the dinner table, you just sort of know, hey, these are the big stories that happened today. So check out the Daily Signal Top News in 10 across all podcast platforms. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. But without further ado, let's let's talk about education, where things stand on the education front. We're going to talk, Madison, about your book here in a second, which I'm so excited for. I just think it's so cool you read a book.
No, she told me this over coffee yesterday, and she's like, yeah, I wrote a book. I'm like, what?
Casual.
With 2 other wonderful co-authors. So
Yes,
honestly,
she
did
was-
probably
yeah.
way more
She
work
said
than
co-author.
I did.
I did. The first I heard of it, though, was Adam's tweet about it a couple days ago. And I was like, Madison's on this book? I'm like, this is epic. I'm like, I can't wait to talk to her about it.
Thank you. More excited.
The drumbeat is coming.
So with that, the need for the book.
For the
stems
book.
from.
Yes. So on Wednesday, we got the latest national report card. So every 2 years, as you all know, we talked about it 2 years ago on the show, which makes me feel
Whoa.
old.
Time is
Time
flying.
flies.
I think I was there too, right?
You were.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago that we talked about.
Wow.
Anyway.
Go us.
Wow. But the latest one is out, and everyone kind of thought, okay, it's been 2 years. It's been it's been 5 years since COVID. Maybe things will have really improved. Sadly, some things have even gotten worse since COVID, because that was the excuse with the last report card was, well, COVID, and which kind of made sense, and I think people had grace for it. But now it's like, oh no. It just looks really dismal. So what this is they look specifically at 4th graders and 8th graders, their proficiency in math and reading. So 2 really big critical things, obviously a big part of your education when you're in elementary and middle school. So let's start with our math scores for 4th graders. So in 2024, 39% of 4th grade students performed at or above the proficiency level. So only 39% of 4th graders are considered proficient in math. This is 3% higher compared to 2024, but it's 2% lower than it was back in 2019 before the pandemic. So not too great. Not doing great there.
Sorry, just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
It's higher than 22.
20, what did I say?
24.
24. Yes. So 2, sorry. Thank you. So yeah, higher than 2022, 3 percentage points higher than 2022, but still 2 percentage points lower than 2019. On though, when it comes to looking at that same level, hold on, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Okay, so 24% of 4th graders performed below the national report card basic level. That's 1 percentage point lower than 2022, but it's 5 percentage points higher compared to 2019. Okay, so that's our 4th graders when it just comes to that math score. 8th graders math score. In 2024, the average score of the 8th graders for math had fallen down to 28% proficiency. So that is 8 points lower compared to 2019. So a huge fall. It's about the same as it was in 2022. Not doing great here. Like 8th graders, only 28% proficient in math. All right, let's talk about reading. So reading among our 4th graders, we have 31% performed at or above that kind of proficiency level. And then for reading for our 8th graders, 30% proficient. Whew.
This is just embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it is important to note that Louisiana did make some gains. They actually, I think that were the state with the most significant gains. Yes, Kate Brumley, state superintendent, doing a wonderful job. Yeah, there. So they actually, and Jay Green, one of my colleagues at the Policy Center, pointed out this morning that Louisiana actually made the most overall improvement on our education freedom report card that we have here at the Heritage Foundation, while also being consistent with the most significant improvements on NAEP. So they got to be doing something right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, huge
There's a
win
silver
for
lining.
Louisiana.
There's a silver something good out of it. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of something good, I think it does highlight, right, the need for school choice programs. That's something we've talked about on this show. Crystal, you've broken that down for us many a time. But when you're looking at often within public education, really cookie cutter one size fits all education programs that clearly are not working for a lot of students across America. And that's why education should be tailored to the needs of a student. And that's why school choice is so powerful, because it allows a parent to say, okay, well, my child's not thriving in public schools. But hey, there's a Montessori school down the street that's very hands-on, and my child can't sit still. They'll do much better in that learning environment. So let me use this program to put them in that.
Yeah.
And we actually saw Trump take some actions on that just on Wednesday.
Yes. So it's National School Choice Week, which is fantastic. It's all this week. And Trump announced this morning that he is supposed to basically go forward with an executive order that would expand education choice for military families. And possibly those under that live at Bureau of Indian Education schools, so our Native American students. So this is going to be a huge win for families, because something we've been talking about for a while is that, retention and recruitment has been a problem in the military. And we know that there was a military time survey that came out a couple of years ago that basically said that families are often deciding whether to re-enlist or not based on their child's education data. So, if they're able to access education choice, their families are able to choose the right school for their child, like you were mentioning earlier, Virginia, this is going to be huge. And ultimately, this is a national security issue, because if we're not having people join our military, re-enlist, do all these things, like, we're going to be less safe and less secure. So
I never thought of it as a national security issue.
That's right. I actually have an op-ed coming on the Washington Times today just about that. But
do you really?
Congratulations.
Yeah, surprise. It's good timing, actually, with the executive order coming down.
Yeah.
I hope it's before he signs the actual executive order. But it makes that argument exactly spot on, Madison, where, you have to take into consideration, like, this population of kids. They're subject to frequent moves. Their parents are being reassigned to different bases, not just within the U.S., but sometimes globally. And so these kids already have a lot of instability in their lives. And so one way that we can kind of come alongside military families and, again, support like national security is just that, is giving the parents the option. And sometimes it might be homeschool, sometimes it might be private school, sometimes it's just a different private school in the same, or public school in the same area. So it's really nice to see President Trump stepping up and doing a lot for these kids that kind of fall outside of the traditional funding model, because they're considered federal kids, if you will, right? So it's a bit different, and good timing with National School Choice Week. So it's good. It's fun.
It's a huge deal. Well, and it is a ebb and flow, right? Where we're not just seeing problems and need for solution at that elementary, middle, high school level, but also with colleges. Yeah. And your book addresses that. So the book is called Slacking, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation.
Yes. And yes, that title was a working narrative with my co-authors, which are Adam Kissel and Rachel Alexander Cambry. They are both, Adam is a visiting fellow here at Heritage, and Rachel is also a visiting fellow, but she is leaving shortly to work over at Belmont Abbey and run their classical educational program there. So very exciting. But yeah, to dive into the book, we basically examined the core curriculum, or the general education courses at all 8 Ivy League universities. So this is Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Penn, Columbia, Brown, Cornell, and Dartmouth. And, what we found is that most of the Ivies are granting significant latitude when it comes to their undergraduate curriculum. So typically when you think of core curricular, you think of, it reflects a wise faculty's determination of the knowledge and academic skills that are probably worth having for undergraduates. But what we found is that for these general educational requirements, these core curriculum, that hundreds of courses can fulfill these requirements. Columbia is the only exception where they actually have certain courses that you can take. Now there's the question of, whether these courses are great or not, but at the same time, for all the other Ivy Leagues, you're looking at hundreds of classes. So just to give you an example, at Cornell, students can take Queer Girlhood, Beyonce Nation, Intersectional Disability Studies. At Yale, they can take Pop Sapphism, Comparative Settler Geographies. At Princeton, there's one course called Shoes. Not sure what that's really about.
It's very open-ended.
And then at Penn, they offer Reality TV and Gender and Decolonizing French Food.
It's like all of our university classes have just been boiled down to headlines.
Yes.
What is this?
No, it's insane. So, and all these courses can fulfill your general education requirements. So you might say that you've taken, the ethics course, but you can take one of these classes to fulfill, the requirements. So the book has 8 chapters, one for each of the Ivies. And we basically went through and talked about all the highlights and lowlights of the courses available to meet each requirement. So we did give a student, because we're hoping this can serve as a guide to conservative parents, to families that are looking, thinking about sending their child to these schools and what are their options here. So we basically ended each chapter with an example of the worst, weak, or terrible courses of study for slackers, we would say, or the best, strong, and recommended courses for serious students. So
Can you like walk us through one of those, or is that's in the book? So it's confidential.
You have to get the book.
Okay.
That is exciting.
We'll walk through it once we've read the book.
Pre-order now.
It's available. Yes, pre-order
Amazon,
now.
wherever you get your books.
I'm expecting
yes.
like the Beyonce Nation, and then you go straight to like Kelsey 101. Something like that.
Well, I'm
insane.
curious though, because so the title of the book is what? Slackers, A Guide to Ivy League Miseducation.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a bit about, because I went through that whole process with Kevin and like naming his book and trying to like pull out the core themes.
Yeah.
How did you guys get to this title?
Yeah, I think we just felt like, a student who was choosing to take all of these courses, like some of the courses that I mentioned, like, no offense, but ultimately they're slacking in terms of, the education that they're getting, and they're slacking in terms of their choices. And, you can get a serious education at some of these institutions. We're not saying that you cannot, but it's really going to take someone who is a serious and motivated student who really wants to get a well-rounded education, who's making the choice to take some of these other courses. And if you're not, we would say that you're a slacker. So that's kind of, how we came about that.
What about, because I feel like we've talked ad nauseum about how, bachelor's degrees or, higher education in general is a bit of a scam in some regards. And it's not always worth the piece of paper that your diploma is printed on.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're talking about kids being invested in getting a well-rounded quality education, that's the dream. Right. But any of us who've gone through higher ed, it's kind of like, okay, I just need to check the boxes, get this done, like get my piece of paper and get out of here.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to, I guess, address those, like the supply side, like the incentives behind getting a well-rounded quality education when it doesn't seem like that incentive is there anymore? It is more get the piece of paper, get out of there.
Yeah, of course. And there are some institutions that are doing this really well. We've highlighted, Heritage has Choosing College with Confidence, which we launched last August. We looked at basically around 280 colleges, and we ranked them, green, yellow, red. And the greens were there are recommended colleges. So there are really great colleges like College of the Ozarks in Missouri. They have nicknamed themselves Hard Work U, where you actually don't pay tuition. You work for the university, and that pays for your classes and things to do. So, and those students are going on to get wonderful jobs, having great families, like all these things. So there are some universities that are really doing it right. So I think there does need to be a larger conversation or a longer conversation about credentialism, over credentialism, requiring grad degrees and all that kind of stuff for jobs that you really don't need grad degrees for. But there are some universities which we highlight that are doing it really well. So
would you say this is? Oh, go ahead. Would you say this is true for career tracks as well, though? So pre-med, because that's the track I was on originally, and majored in biology. And I don't feel like there was as much of the liberal arts, distracted liberal arts education.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Ivy Leagues are different, where they've always been known for having, being like a liberal arts education and providing, those general or like core curriculum requirements. And so that was something we wanted to highlight of like, this is what the Ivies are known for, but this is actually what you're getting if you, go to college there. But other colleges, like if you went to Emory or other, some of them don't have like these, just kidding. These other general or core curriculum requirements. So they're probably focused on more getting their students out and getting jobs. And
maybe less distracted would be a better way of saying it.
One of the, correct me if I'm wrong, we did an episode on this when we got back from Wyoming from launching the report card and the Choosing College with Confidence guide. And one of the metrics that we looked at in that was like how much students were making and reporting back to their universities, like, I got this job, this is how much I make, right? I can't remember what the term is for that. But.
Yes, we were looking at like the average income post-graduation. So that's something that's collected by the U.S. Department of Education, one of the things that they do sort of well on the college scorecard. And they basically track, I think it's the median or the average income, 5 to 10 years post-graduation. So that was something we wanted to include because we think it's important. Like not only are you graduating and getting a job, but you're having a decent income, after graduation.
Yeah. So if you're curious, you can go back to that episode. It was like August, I think. Late August, early September when we talked about that, and check out the Choosing College with Confidence guide. It's a cool tool.
Do you all pinpoint in the book kind of like where this started? Like when was the downfall? Because obviously like the Ivy Leagues used to be the pinnacle of education and it was the gold standard. Not anymore. was there like a certain moment when or is it like a really slow decay?
So we didn't actually really go into that in the book. There have been other organizations like ACTA and others who have really studied this, and they have reports, and you can go and look at them. But no, that's not really something we highlighted. We just wanted to, I guess we've seen a little bit more over the last like couple of decades. There hasn't really been much word about what the Ivy Leagues are actually teaching. And so we just felt like it would be a good idea to go in, especially as parents and especially conservative parents are becoming even more skeptic of education on higher education, specifically for their children. So, no, I don't know how to,
Next book, that's a sequel.
There you go. There you go. So give us, for those listening, no bias, but give us like maybe 3 or 4 colleges that you're like, hey, these colleges are actually doing really, really well. I know you mentioned College of the Ozarks, but others that you're like, you should actually consider these because they're doing awesome.
Yeah, definitely. There's like, I would say we probably recommended like 30 or 40 on the college guide. So I'm just trying to pinpoint a few. There's like St. John's in Annapolis. I think they have another satellite campus in New Mexico. They're doing excellent work. The University of Austin is a new university. They just had their first class, I think a couple weeks ago. Actually, no, back in August, sorry.
This year. School year.
It feels like a couple weeks ago.
Yes, they're doing fantastic work. I mean...
Always give our friends at Wyoming Catholic.
Yes, Wyoming Catholic,
Yes.
of course.
Yes. Go spend a semester on horseback in the backcountry.
Oh, man.
Yes, makes me want to go back.
Yes,
to
please.
undergrad.
Yes. So if you go on our Choosing Colleges with Confidence, any of our green light, our recommended colleges, we would say are, really doing good work.
I love it. Well, pre-order the book.
Yeah.
And congratulations.
Yeah,
Congrats.
Thanks for letting us start that.
Slacking. Yeah, coming out in May. All right. Well, we have sort of a fun, I guess you'd call it a game, that we want to get a little bit of just reaction to a moment that went pretty viral on social media this week. And it's worth talking about because there's some misinformation here. So let's go ahead as we hit this cultural moment of the week. Let's go ahead and pull up Selena.
All my people are getting attacked. The children. They don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
Okay. Oh, Selena.
The
sweet
hysteria.
Girl. I just like, okay, misinformation
Yes.
is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I have no doubt that those are real tears and that Selena is truly upset, but she has bought into misinformation. Because unless Selena is a member of Tren de Aragua or MS-13, no, Selena, these are not your people being deported. These are criminals, and they are gang members. They're child rapists. She says in that she's like, the children. Literally, if you Google, I did this yesterday, Google children being deported. You know what comes up? Child rapists being deported. So no, let's be clear. We are focused, as the Trump administration and Tom Homan have been incredibly clear, the number one priority is getting the criminals off of our streets.
Yeah, and we love seeing Chrissy Nome up in New York the other
my
day,
gosh.
like in her bulletproof vest. She's like got the full kit on, hair just exquisite.
Yeah,
like
as
just
always.
looks. She makes like military garb look chic. I don't know how she does it, but she does. And she's out there and she's like, we're here. It's 7 a.m. We're on the streets of New York City. We're getting the scumbags off the street. Like that's exactly what she said. I was like, I love this. And something that you brought up, our former Heritage colleague and now Border Czar Tom Homan, he is so great at messaging on this.
Yeah.
When you're talking about these children and the humanitarian crisis at the border, the true humanitarian crisis is that we have an open border and that these women and children, these victims, are being trafficked across the border at the, for the benefit of the cartels and for these, transnational terrorist organizations. Now we know that President Trump has declared that they're all foreign terrorist organizations, which opens up a whole realm of possibilities for, punishing them for this travesty. But the true crisis is just that, is that these women and children that are here that have been trafficked over had to, I don't even know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but the numbers of women and children that were raped and abused on, like, as they're being trafficked into this country, it's insane. And the fact that anyone can, like, I don't doubt that her hysteria is genuine, like with the quote unquote information that she had available to her. But the true crisis is just that the Biden administration for 4 years allowed this to go on and didn't shut it down, and unknown numbers of women and children were abused in the process.
Yeah. Well, I still remember the first time I was down in Arizona at the border, and I was doing a ride along with a gentleman who oversaw the anti-smuggling unit in Pinal County in Arizona. And he was like, "Have you heard of rape trees?" I was like, "No, what's that?" And the longer I started covering the border, I was like, oh, wow, this is actually very common. Everyone just knows what rape trees are. And they're trees that had kind of low-hanging branches, and cartel members would use those types of trees to literally rape women, and would often then hang their undergarments in the tree as like a sign of like, you know, the number of times. So totally disgusting. It's like, that's the reality. And those are the kind of people that have been benefiting and had a multi-billion-dollar benefit from trafficking of human beings, women, children, innocent lives across our southern border.
It's just so sad how twisted everything has become, and that's why I'm so excited by, you know, Secretary Noem. And there's a reason she was in New York, and there's a reason Homan was in Chicago, and I have friends working with him right now, and he has not stopped going to sites where they can, you know, find these criminals. They're all criminals because they've all broken the law, but those that are more violent and exploiting children and women, and making tons of money and living off of our system that's just so corrupt. There's reasons they're going to these places, and that's because that's where the worst of the worst are. And so I feel kind of bad for Selena because she's bought into this horrible lie, as have a lot of Americans. I mean, if you saw Noem's questioning and that confirmation hearing, they were not slow to weaponize their messaging there either, in the questions they asked her. But they're finally doing something about it, and they're actually tracking it too. Talking about the number of arrests, the number of detentions, and updating the American people regularly, because like we saw with the Lake and Riley Act being passed as quickly as it was, people want this. It's a popular issue. This is one of the most popular issues that Trump ran on. I'm not exactly remembering, but I think it was like 60-something% of Americans supported large deportations. I think it was mass deportations, but we'll have to look. But yeah, it's insane, and I feel so bad, but I'm also like, come on, Selena, let's think for ourselves a little bit. Maybe she comes out.
We should probably put a pin in this for a second and go back to like the reason why she's so hysterical, which we haven't covered yet, which happened in such a blur that, you know, if you missed it, I would totally appreciate that. Sunday, President Trump announces that they're sending back all these Colombian folks back. They're repatriating Colombians from the U.S. that were here illegally, most of them violent criminals. And the president of Colombia said, no, we're not having it. We're not going to accept.
We don't want those people.
Yeah, we don't want those people. It's like, you're emptying out your prisons and your jails, sending them to our country. You're not going to take them back. Don't think so. And within a few holes on the golf course, Trump says we're going to slap 25% tariffs on Colombia effective immediately. These are emergency tariffs. And if this doesn't change in the next week, they go up to 50%. So that's where everyone on the left, all these talking heads in the media, The View, etc., they're like, oh, fresh flowers are going to be more expensive. Valentine's is right around the corner.
I was like, not the Colombian coffee.
Not the coffee. Like, coffee prices are going up. And Will Kane on his show this week said it so perfect. He's like, you're telling me that for 25-cent cheaper cup of coffee, I have to accept Lake and Riley being murdered? Absolutely not. And within a matter of a few holes on the golf course, after President Trump put that post out, the Colombian president immediately backtracks and offers his own presidential plane to repatriate these criminals. It's a masterclass in statesmanship. You can't make this up. It's incredible. And so that is what Selena Gomez is freaking out about. Yes.
Hey, America's back.
We're so back.
Cue the Melania photo again, right?
The sheriff is back in town, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but actions, consequences, it's happening.
Right. And it's getting done. Actually getting done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us this week for Problematic Women. This was fun, guys.
Pre-order.
That was awesome.
Pre-order.
Slackers.
So sweet.
Yeah. Well, Madison, Adam.
Do it.
Rachel. I love it.
Amazing. Have a great rest of your week.
Cheers.
Woo. Cheers.